would like you to meet our industry experts. We have, in alphabetical order, we have Anthony Borgo, coordinator of Baking and Pastry Arts program at Georgian College. We have Paul Hetherington, president and CEO of the Baking Association of Canada. We have Steve Fox, the owner of Fox's Bakery, and Bonnie Cable, CPA, CGA, and president of AKR Consulting Canada. Welcome, esteemed guests, to Innovation Day. Now, before we begin, just a reminder to everyone who's listening, you can type any questions you have at any time using GoToWebinar questions feature just to the right of your screen. So my first question is for Paul Hetherington. Welcome again.
Thank you, Naomi.
All right, as the president, the CEO and president of the VAC, now the changing pandemic landscape means staying agile. What advice do you have for bakeries?
Well, for those bakeries who are still with us, I might be a bit challenging me to give you advice because obviously you've done well so far. I think going forward, I mean, we're seeing here in Ontario, the third wave is now taking effect. And so, you know, I guess my real advice would come down to don't be complacent. Many of the struggles that we've gone through in the past year are still with us. I mean, we've been able to navigate many of those challenges, whether it be supply chain, staffing, the whole labor issue, et cetera. But we're not over this yet. And so we need to still remain diligent. I know the labor issue with employees testing positive is becoming very problematic here, particularly in Southern Ontario. So one still needs to be on top of this and continue to manage it as aggressively as we did back in March of 2020.
Okay. Now, this next question is for Steve Fox, the owner of Fox's Bakery and Delicatessen in Barrie, Ontario. You've been in business longer than many family-owned bakeries. So I'm going to ask you, how do you stay on top of businesses during your business anyway, during the pandemic, as the deli element of your business couldn't operate as it would normally? Bring this over to Bonnie Cable. Bonnie, who's both a CPA and a CGA, you've seen a lot of companies struggle during the last year. What sort of funding or grants do you see being the most beneficial?
Well, Naomi, I think that a lot of the government funding programs, the Canadian Emergency Rent Subsidy and the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy, have been quite utilized by businesses. I think the concern is going to be come June 5th, when those programs come to an end, what are businesses going to do? I think Justine did a wonderful job of speaking earlier, and I think all of the, pivoting and being a very smart woman and looking at all of, all the opportunities around, I think that's what businesses have to do, and they need to be proactive. There are 3 other funding programs if the Canadian Emergency Rent Subsidy and Wage Subsidy are not renewed that businesses should look at. One of them would be a program called WorkShare that has been around for a very long time. That allows businesses to keep the employees on staff for 2 to 3 days a week. And then the other 2 to 3 days a week, they would be paid by EI from the government. And that could be a great way of retaining employees. The provincial relief program is another one in Ontario, and across the country there's been similar relief programs. The program in Ontario is $20,000 per business, and I think Ontario, they're giving out another payment this month, and as I mentioned, the same thing should be going on across Canada. One last program would be the Canadian United Small Business Fund. We've seen 2 installments of that so far, and that is for PPE that is not being paid for by the provincial government. That's another $5,000 that I think businesses need to stay on top of.
And how could people access them? Would they go to a government website, or could they ask their local accountant for access to these grants?
Yeah, I think you could try your local accountant would be, your first place to start. I would say the majority of local accountants are on top of the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy rent subsidy, and the provincial programs. When it comes to the other programs, unfortunately, I think it's a lot of specialty companies like ourselves, or you could try your local city councillor or member of provincial parliament could be another one to go to.
Got it. Now we'll try Steve Fox again. Can you try your audio? We'll see if that's working.
Hello.
Yay, we have audio. I'm so excited. All right, so I'll just ask that question again. Since you've been in business for so long, I mean, how did you stay on top of your business when the deli part of your bakery couldn't operate as it would normally?
Right, we had to change our deli operations simply because of a staffing issue. We had a number of staff that did not want to or could not come into work at the beginning last March. So we had to really focus on the bakery side, and we did offer some limited deli options. With our store being such a small store, it's less than 700 square feet. And our biggest problem was getting people through the door. Being limited to just 6 customers, we had to pivot quickly, and curbside was the way we went. And we were way behind on not having an online store. And we've now rectified that, but it was a long 9 or 10 months.
I can imagine that. So how did you handle curbside? Did you have, say, an app, where people could place an order and wait by curbside, or did they just come to the door and wait on the sidewalk?
Certainly, we at the beginning we were encouraging phone calls, and then when they arrived to the bakery, they could call the bakery, and we'd bring it out to their vehicle with a mobile debit credit machine. Or if they'd prefer no contact at all, we could take a credit card over the phone. And a lot of people took us up on it. They'd pop their trunk, and we'd put it in their trunk and wave to them, and there'd be no contact at all. Now we have an online store, and it's working really well because the orders are placed, and we're up to about 45 orders a day now, which that's 45 people that before we couldn't get through the store. So we're quite happy with it.
So would you say that adding the web functionality was worth any cost that it took to implement?
I think what it does is there's basically we have 3 customers, and I'm sure a lot of other bakery owners are the same. You have those customers that really want to come into your store, and they don't mind because it's a smaller retail environment. They feel safe in it. We also have that customer that doesn't want to know anything about a computer. They want to call and talk to someone. And then we have a third customer, which is to some extent, you'd be surprised, it's not just a younger demographic, but it's people that can look online, take their time, shop, and then place that order, come and call us when they arrive, and we can put it in their car for them. We are finding that the online orders are substantially higher in average sale.
That's interesting. What would you attribute that to?
Well, I think people aren't rushed. People are conscientious of lineups, and they look, they wait in a lineup, and they're going in the store, and they're trying to rush to shop to get what they need and get the heck out, right? Whereas online, they can take their time, maybe take 30 minutes, have a cup of coffee or a beverage of choice, and make those decisions. And they're ordering a wide variety. We're finding that our sweets, our pastries, our deli's back up and fully going now. So even deli items, but our bakery is just doing we're selling items that before were sort of stuck on a shelf, and now people are seeing it online. Maybe it's a nice picture, it looks better on a picture online as opposed to on the shelf, and it's really helping our average sale.
Well, that's great. And, again, that's a really good way to just step up and use use technology to your advantage for an old world craft of baking.
Yeah.
So the next question is for Chef Anthony Borgo. Speaking of agility, which Fox's Bakery has shown, um, that might be something culinary schools and restaurants may have to consider in the future as well. How has the pandemic changed the curriculum in schools? I mean, aside from obvious considerations like hygiene, social distances, what are some of the challenges that graduates would have to consider coming fresh out of the gates out of culinary school?
It's a great question, Naomi. It's a loaded question.
Yeah.
This year, we were one of the few culinary schools that ran delivering in-house practical courses. And that taught us, and we learned quite a bit just for us trying to adapt and deliver that content. And that was a really good experience for the students to figure out what it would look like, you know, on the job, right? Or internally in a bakery to deliver or to make products in a production format. I think some of the things that we've really learned this year from the BAKE program is how is our distance learning and what does that mean and how do we offer that curriculum or how do we enhance that? And I'm listening to Steve, and it's very interesting because some of those things that we normally do in curriculum, we're very good in the college for getting students to have a big idea, but then how do you deliver that from a small standpoint, like starting to deliver that in a business or create that. And so it was interesting just listening to you, Steve, at Fox's there. Just what are some of those things? What does it take to put an online format together? And we've really had to bring that into the entrepreneurial focus and delivering of the curriculum this year. So a lot of developing more of what we thought we were teaching online and social media. What are some of the rules around that? How do we do that properly? And then how do students sort of stick to those, you know, the marketing of a product or developing of a product and then getting that message out to a customer. So it's been a very interesting school year. And I think looking at next year, we're hopeful that this all goes away. But I think to answer your question, Naomi, I think long term, it looks like it's something that a normal business is going to have to do and develop more. And we're going to have to develop more of that with the curriculum at the college, right?
Sure. On the heels of that thought, there's some need to consider marketing oneself for the digital age. Companies that had truly thrived or online using social media, generally publicizing their hours, their goods, like Steve Fox's Bakery, and specialties on social media, as well as through third-party delivery services like Uber Eats or Let's Eat. So at this point, I'll open this question up to the floor. Are there any tips any of you would have for marketing a bakery online? What has worked the best?
Oh, I'll start if I could then.
Absolutely.
I'm not comfortable on computers, as quite obvious. I unmute it myself or mute it myself. But what we find now is we've spent a lot of our budget that we used to spend on regular, so-called regular media, and we've hired somebody to take care of the social media for us. And it's the best money I've ever spent. She takes care of Google and Facebook and Instagram and whatever else she does. I don't know, but it works for us.
What percentage of I'd say increase in engagement have you seen?
We have doubled since last March in increase in followers and all the other stuff they call it. But it's worked well for us. We get so many people saying, "Oh, I saw your special online. I've you know, oh, your hours are updated." But it's important that that information is correct, because all of a sudden you have 6 or 7 different avenues, and if that information you're sending mixed message, it also does not look good on the business as well.
Yeah, it's true. You know, something as simple as not being open when, when your website says that you are can really be detrimental. Now, when you do post on, let's say, either Facebook or Instagram, what have you noticed works best?
Giving the customer a warm fuzzy. That's what,
Okay.
you know what, way back when I went to Georgia, that was one of the terms that our marketing teacher taught us. And you try to engage the customer, make them feel super important that that message is going directly to them, and try to be involved in the community. You know, do a fundraising. We did just not too long ago at Christmas. We did a fundraising where we made a bun tree for Christmas, and $1 from every bun tree was donated to the Salvation Army kettle drive. And you know, that goes a long way. And it's you're helping your community, and it helps people feel warm about your business. So we promote that kind of stuff on our Facebook and social media to engage people, to make them realize we're local.
That is really key because a lot of people do like to feel that their little indulgence is offset by doing some sort of community good. So that's a wonderful point to use the warm fuzzy to market your wares. When you're also putting something up online, what sort of images do you find really gets those likes going?
We're I guess trying to do some creative stuff. We did a commercial with not a commercial, just a picture with a senior holding a baguette, and it was just and then we did like a quick little tagline about the bread of life kind of thing. And we're trying to have a little bit of fun in a very serious time, and we're just trying different things, and some things don't work too, so you got to try them though.
Yeah, yeah, just to go out there and experiment. So for those who may not be comfortable either with social media or any factor of online living, this next question is for Bonnie Cable, who had mentioned previously that there were other grants. Now, with the mention of the Digital Main Street grant that provided funding for small bakeries that didn't yet own their own website, can you speak a little bit about the Digital Main Street or any other grant that could help bakeries go online and create a brand for themselves?
Sure. I think Digital Main Street is a great program. It's been around for a couple of years now. I'd like to say at least 3 or 4, and it will give a business, any business with a physical location that pays property taxes, up to $2,500 to pay a third party for developing a website, enhancing a website, and also any of the social media marketing as well. So Google AdWords, Facebook, and just digital marketing. So it's a great program. Steve, you should look into it, and you can use it more than once. So if you receive funding this year, you could also apply to receive funding the following year as well, which is, I think, really important to know.
So oh, sorry.
That would be the first program. The second one that I think anyone watching this would like to look into is the Canada United Small Business Fund, which again, all of these small businesses and bakeries, they've had to pivot, right? And pivoting means getting a digital presence if you didn't have one, or enhancing your digital presence. And the Canada United Small Business Fund will go retroactive to March 20th for any expenditures. So as I said, that program's not currently open, but it could open again at any time, and you can go back retroactively and get those funds. Next, we could say you could look at training grants. There are training grants available to any business to pay a third party for training. It's up to $10,000 for your employees. So if you have a bakery and you've got somebody at that bakery who wants to take on digital marketing, why not send them for a course? You could send them for a college course, a university course, or just have them pay a third party to teach them these skills. And you'd be able to get 80% of the cost of training of the employee. So that would be the third way. And the last opportunity would be hire a co-op student. Hire a co-op student from a college or university on a work term for 4 months and have them look after all your IT, including getting a new improved website with ordering online. So those would be all the tips that I have.
Oh, that's terrific. Now, are any of these grants or funds tax deductible?
Are they tax deductible? Well, you're getting this money straight up. So, what you have to do is you have to declare any grant money that you receive. So a lot of this is grant money that would be taxable at the end of the day.
Okay, but it still seems like a wonderful win-win situation. Not only are you getting to train somebody and you're getting them, from straight, just from the ground up. You can train them yourself and hopefully retain them. Also, it gives you some sort of a little leeway in a way to get more staff. So that sounds like a fantastic deal if you do hire a co-op student. Now, this next question is for both Paul Hetherington and Steve Fox. First, I'll start with Paul Hetherington. How have food standards changed since the pandemic has started?
Well, I don't think food standards have changed in the sense of the quality of the food, et cetera. I think, it's a real kudos to the food industry that over the last year that we've been able to maintain the quality of food that's available for sale in the grocery stores, and not only the quality of it, but the quantity of it. Aside from some panic purchasing and some hoarding that was going on, I mean, the food industry has done an exemplary job in making sure that there's food on the shelves for Canadians. So I think we could, if you will, take a collective pat on the back for the huge effort that went in there. Everybody through the supply chain from farm, from farm to fork. I think we've also seen though that, because of some challenges in production, ingredient availability, et cetera, we've seen some rationalization on the number of products that are available in the marketplace. It'll be interesting long term to see if that continues, or if, as we get back to some semblance of normal, we're going to be into a situation whereby we're going to have more choice at the either at the grocery store or available at retail. As I said, we've done an exemplary job with regards to making sure food's on the shelf. The quality of the food we've been able to maintain that. And overall, with a few hiccups here or there, particularly in the early days, things have gone relatively well from a food perspective.
Yeah, no, that's great. So Steve, have you noticed any clients asking for either something new now that you've changed your business model to accommodate online orders? Are people asking for either more high fiber or low carb or anything unusual?
Not really so much. They're conscientious of like standards of cleanliness and making sure gloves are worn and hairnets, etc. But as far as for product wise, we have found a trend, especially during the lockdown sessions, more towards the bad stuff, the danishes, the cinnamon buns, the white product, and less on the whole wheat and the multigrains, to be very honest with you.
That's interesting. You've learned people are trying to comfort themselves with food a little bit more.
I think so, and it shocked us at the beginning because prior to mid-March of last year, whole wheat and multigrain sales and whole grain sales were soaring, and then all of a sudden, we looking at our sales, and it's like white bread's back in, and cinnamon buns and danishes, and whole wheat is a hard product to sell.
It is true. I mean, it's interesting because if I looked at my statistics from last year, 2 years ago, I don't know what time means anymore. But in 2019, there was a great jump towards superfoods and trends that focused on gut health and improving overall health. And I would have thought that with a pandemic looming, in fact, even being here, people would be asking for more healthful choices. So my question is, what are you doing to, I guess, promote the indulgence side? Are you packaging anything for, say, stay-at-home brunches or any events?
And what we're finding great success with quick meals like pizza kits, for example. It's great. We pack them up and parents buy them. It's a family event for them. It passes a bit of time. We're also finding like sweet packs. So you get a Chelsea bun, some Danishes, and loaf cake, and then there's your dessert. So we're that's the kind of things we're finding right now.
That's great. I mean, I love a good Chelsea bun myself. But it's always good to sort of try to see what it is that your clients want and try to engage that entrepreneurial spirit for startups and such. So now, speaking on the key of entrepreneurial spirit, I'll start with Bonnie. What sort of grants or funds would you recommend a company that's just starting up to go with?
There is a grant available for mentorship for anyone starting a new business, and it's $5,000. And you would want to go to your local city councilor or your member of parliament. Just send them an email to get more information on that. There are also other programs available for individuals under 39 years of age that are starting a new business. There is additional funding available for them as well. And there is some funding for women entrepreneurs in Northern Ontario and outside of the GTA.
Now that's great. So I interrupt. That's what I do. What I meant to ask was for the women's entrepreneurs, would that be for startups, or would a bakery run by women or owned by a woman be able to apply even if they've been in business for a few years?
It varies. It varies per program. In Northern Ontario, where it's difficult to gain employment, there would definitely be money for expansion of a company. So that's where I would start.
Terrific. And, it's interesting to know because there are, baking is such an interesting, very diverse sort of industry. Have you noticed that there are any grants for diversity, for BIPOC bakers, or anybody who's perhaps, not even on that gender spectrum in any way? Would there be any grants for that sort of diversity as well?
I haven't seen any of those arise as yet. So I can't say specifically in that area.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And again, I remind anyone who's watching, if you have any questions for any of our experts, please send them along. I can either be reached by email, and if you have a question on how to reach any of our panelists, do reach out again, and we could certainly put you in touch if you had further questions. So now, as Steve had mentioned, cinnamon buns were just blowing up on his bakery menu. And when I spoke earlier with Chef Anthony Borgo, we spoke earlier about how your students are coping with new economy and they're finding opportunities that others did not. Do you have any success stories that you would like to share about your students' ventures into entrepreneurship?
Sure. In the fall, every semester we do a workshop or a class on donuts. In particular, in the fall, with this cohort, we did that in the fall. We did a donut class, and I thought it was interesting because many of the students had never made donuts before. And then there was one young lady in particular, an excellent student, and she lives out in the Angus area. And she started up on weekends. Her family were so enamored with this, with the donuts. They started up this project. They started making the donuts every weekend. And then it's turned into her putting a business plan together this semester. And she's been using social media to get her donuts out there into the community. And that's been an interesting sort of development for her. And it's something that Steve was talking about before. You were saying that you had some items that were on the shelf that people didn't know you had. And then in this young lady's case, she was taking these pictures of the donuts, and then it just exploded online and went right throughout the community, and everybody starts asking for things. And so that's sort of how we're seeing students sort of develop a business or just get off the ground running with something because it's something that they really enjoy or something they might not know a lot about, but then it's the audience response, right? And that's sort of, I think that's what's happening, and we're seeing that sort of growth. So that's just sort of a little story that's we're seeing that's happened this year with some of our students.
Well, that is really interesting. I mean, it's interesting to see how she reached out using social media to call attention to her donuts, and the public responded. And, I'd love to hear more about this. So I want to thank all of you for your amazing insights. And for those of you who are watching, there's still more to come.